Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cast episode 111. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
How are you, folks?
Shit.
I'm ranty. I'm ranty, Steve.
Ranty. Yes, we know that. And in the pre-podcast warm-up, you've done nothing rant about your internet connection. It's been quite humorous.
It has.
I couldn't actually put it on the podcast because it would just be one constant air horn noise.
It would be a lot of that. And we don't endorse any single internet company either, do we? So we wouldn't like to badmouth one of them.
I was going to say, well, we're not necessarily endorsing your particular supplier of choice right now, are we?
Oh, well, but if we had a rant about mine, we'd have to have a rant about all the other ones as well, and we could be here a long time.
That's very true, and that's not what we're about.
No, we're here to rant about board games.
Yes.
We can do that too. Let's.
Yes.
What's the word? What's the word when you divert your rantiness at something else? It's not diversion. What is that word that psychologists use? Displacement.
Oh God, I know what you mean. Oh,
Freudian.
My brain's just gone blank. The cock.
I'm not shagging my mother, mate. It's not Freudian.
Oh, I know the word, but my brain can't think of it.
I can't think of either. But I have to give it 20 minutes.
Deflection.
No.
I don't know.
No, I don't know. There's listeners here who'll be screaming into their headphones on the bus at this rate.
Well, they can post in the comments and tell us what their word is, or we'll remember it in 20 minutes, like the old.
We will, yeah. For the vocabulary deficient, scream it into the notes.
Yes. So, Andy, you went to Aircon.
I did. It was bloody good, actually, to be fair. Although we almost didn't get there. It took us about 4 hours to get all there. Because the M6
what was the problem
the
this
M6.
time?
Oh, no, it's just the M6. Nothing.
The M6.
There's no technical issues, just the M6. It just took a long time. And it stopped twice for various reasons. Food, mostly.
Food is a point, actually, because I thought, based on the pictures you were sending us in our Facebook chat group, that you hadn't gone to a board game convention, but instead gone to a street food convention.
I had. It was a street food convention that just happened to do board games too. I have to say, the food was bloody awesome. It was very, very good. I think, apart from the crepes, I ate at every establishment in the weekend. Oh no, I didn't have the pizzas either. Shame. I'll try harder next time. But yeah, no, it was really good, to be fair. Despite your lack of presence, I don't know if it was the biggest yet, but it certainly felt bigger. It was still the Hereford Convention Centre, so the usual layout. Hereford? No, not Hereford. Harrogate. We're off to a solid start. Hereford would have been closer.
Yeah, it would have been easy to get to. I might have been able to go if it was in Hereford.
It's the middle bit where all of the stalls and the sort of show and tell seemed a bit bigger this year. I don't know if it was, because obviously it was 2 years since we last went, so my brain's obviously potentially forgotten things, but there seemed to be a lot more going on in terms of people sort of showing off their wares and a few more sort of vendors and things like that. So the usual suspects were there, so Travelling Man and Firestorm games and things like that, so they were all there. Honey Badger were there selling their delicious jellies. We always like those. And a few other, sort of friends that we've seen around, sort of tested their games. So they were all there as well. So I made a point of saying hello, which was nice to see, actually, because it's been 2 years since we've sort of seen nearly anybody from the sort of the playing side of games. Obviously, I went to Expo last year, but it was a drastically reduced Expo. But it was nice to see people pretty much back in force, really. It was very much, right, we're playing some goddamn games this weekend, people. And everyone seemed to be pretty much on it. So whilst masks were present, I think by basically about halfway through the day, everyone thought, fuck this, put the masks aside and just, we're in a room with 2,000 people. We're not going to avoid it if it's there. So, that was all good. And then, the Saturday night, they had the late night gaming till about 1:30. So
that's good, because that was one of the issues we always had. They never used to do late night gaming. It always used to be like 10:30 they finished, or 10 o'clock I think it was. So you get to the hotel bar and the hotel bar will be absolutely rammed at that point.
Yep. No, they sort of shooed us upstairs to the upstairs room, kind of opposite where the Bring and Buy and all that lot is. It's on the other side of that, and there's the first question we asked when they said, "Could you please go upstairs? You know, we're shutting the main convention." So I said, "Okay, was there a bar?" Yeah, it's open. Right, see you in a bit. Off we go upstairs, and we did, and there was a few of us there, and we ended up playing Jabba's Palace, which is basically sort of Star Wars version of Love Letter, and that was awesome. One of the greatest gaming experiences of my life, because I was on a new friend, Gareth, who runs a gaming club in Wales. I think, no, he lives in Twickenham, but he's from Wales. And he was, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Love Letter. The idea is obviously each card has a character on it, and that character has a little power, and those powers vary depending on the character. And this particular card said, play this card, and the person with the lowest numbered card has to discard, or is basically gets rid of their card and is out. And so he plays this card very confidently, admittedly we'd ordered a couple of beers at this point, without really paying attention to what his other card is, because there's always two cards in your hand. You draw one and play one of the two that you've got, and he said, right, we'll start at one. Who's got one? No. Who's got two? No. And he gets to him. Shit, it's me. He basically shot himself in the foot.
Oh, I love Love Letter.
It was brilliant. Absolutely fantastic play.
I love that game, but unfortunately, my wife can read me like a book. So the cards get dealt, and she immediately goes, "Steve's got the princess."
Ooh!
And I'm like, how the hell did you work that out? And first of all, I'm like, no, it's lies. You know, I haven't got it. And then it comes comes the end of the game, and yes, I've got the princess. She goes, "See, told you." How the hell did you work that out straight away? She goes, "You're a rubbish liar." It's brilliant.
We should play poker, Steve.
No.
So that was fun. We got quite a lot of games played, actually. There's a list in front of us.
You've put a massive list. Don't go for all of them. We'll talk about one of them a bit more later, because I think it's a bit more of a hot game. But other than Love Letter and this other game, which we'll talk about, is there anything else that really jumped out at you?
Well, Gareth's huge version of Takenoko was pretty fun, because I'd never played Takenoko before, so I sat down.
Have you not?
No, I've never played it. Oh. So now I have. And it was literally enormous. The hexes were about sort of this big. I mean, I don't know, 6 inches across? Each of the hexes was massive, and then the huge, great wooden bamboo stalks that you sort of put together as well, and a massive, great sculpts of the gardener. It was really, really pretty. I mean, huge, great box. He broke his back to carry the bloody thing, but that was pretty good fun. And then we played Moonrakers, which is something our local board game club sort of leader, Matt, was quite interested in trying out, which is essentially a bidding game. The idea is that you're a sort of band of space mercenaries called the Moonrakers. No James Bond here, or dodgy villains called Drax in this one. No. And the idea is that there are contracts, missions that you can go on, but the idea is that you might need other people to go on it. Do you remember years ago we reviewed No Honor Among Thieves?
Yes.
It's a bit like that.
Oh, I was reminded of that game the other day, because I was flicking through the latest copy of Tabletop Gaming Magazine, and they reviewed it. And I'm like, oh, damn it, I really want to play that game again. Yeah,
really enjoyed it. But you remember the idea that you could try to do a heist on your own, but the chances of success are pretty low without someone else's help.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. So the idea is you're not really bidding to take part in it, but it's kind of a negotiation game. You know, well, who can do this and who can contribute this, blah, 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 blah. Now, you don't have to contribute anything at all, so there's a bit of blag and bluff in there as well. So, I mean, of course, there is punishment for people failing the mission, but on the whole, it was kind of fun. I could see where the game was going, but the rulebook was f***ing atrocious. It really needs a version 2. But the game itself was kind of fun if you like kind of negotiation games. So I think you'd probably like it. I think you'd both quite like it, actually, because of this interaction, this banter, this kind of, yes, I could totally do that kind of approach to the game. But it is quite long. But, I mean, you could arbitrarily shorten it, as we did, because I think we were there for about 2 hours trying to play this thing. I mean, we each of us got about 2 points out of 10. We thought, you know what? We're not here to play this all weekend. Let's do something else. But we did quite enjoy it, and it's very, very pretty, but it's about £100 for the sort of super-duper deluxe Kickstarter version, and you can tell. But it was kind of fun. But, yeah, it needs a better rulebook. So that was down there. That was actually our first game we played. But it's, other than the stuff on the list there, which I think you've probably played most of them already, that was definitely worth looking into. So that's Moonrakers. I can't remember who publishes it, but it's in a sort of blue box.
It is published by IV Games.
There you go.
which I've never heard of before, actually.
This might well be their first game, because it was, I believe, a Kickstarter, and I think it's only just started being sort of fulfilled at the moment.
Okay. Oh, they've done a few. They've got 3 different. Apparently, they've got 8 games. Oh no, they've got like 3 games, but with loads of expansions. There we go.
So yes, Moonrakers was good fun. We enjoyed that. Mostly, per se, apart from the rulebook.
Cool.
But there was a charity auction there as well. There were 2, I think, charity events. I only attended one of them, but there was this sort of huge charity auction where loads and loads of people had contributed games from various sources, and there were a bunch of tables. You basically just went around, bought a load of tickets, and just put your tickets in various buckets. And there was about sort of 10 games on each table, and if you won, you won a table of games basically, which was really quite good.
Blimey.
Yeah. About one person had turned up on the train and won a table full of games. It's like, right, okay, who wants a free game? Because I need to get these home. That raised about, if I remember rightly, about £6,500 for charity, which I do believe a lot of it has gone to Ukraine. And there was another charity event as well. I can't remember what it was, but that raised another sort of 3.5, 4. So I think they raised somewhere between £10,000 and £11,000 for charity for Aircon, which is really, really good. It was very, very good. I rather enjoyed it, and I think the feeling is that around the camp when we were there was that because Aircon's, I think, the first major convention of the year, it's for almost us, like a tester for like the rest of the year to see how people are feeling about attending conventions. And because this place was packed, it was really, really full. I mean, it wasn't uncomfortably full. There was always gaming space. So it was nicely full, because it was well attended. I think that the confidence for the rest of the year is actually pretty high, that folk are going to go to conventions, and, you has sort of returned to normal now, which is good. So yeah, very enjoyable.
We just have to have a little bit of an apology, because according to the scheduling for Aircon, we were supposed to do a live podcast, which we couldn't do. Well, we could have done, but it would have just been Andy talking at you. And, nothing stopping him, so God knows what would have happened.
It wouldn't have been fair on everybody for just Andy to talk.
Please accept our apologies if you turned up for that, because I had no idea that this was still scheduled. I know that they'd put some time aside for us for ages, but I thought it'd all been cancelled. And then I suddenly got loads of messages going, "Where are you? We're all in the room waiting for you to start." And I'm like, well, I'm about 300 miles away.
Yeah, I think there must have been some kind of communication breakdown, because I had talked to Mark prior, and I had talked to him on the day as well, but apparently it was still being announced 10 minutes before the actual event. So yeah, sorry for all of that. I was considering turning up at the door going, no, go away, it's just me. Nobody wants to hear me rant for an hour. Although I did bump into a few listeners, so they say what's going on, so I explained, and they were very understanding. So I think in the wash, it's all come out, and everyone's kind of very understanding of what's happened, why people couldn't turn up. So, it's just life conspired against us, I think, is pretty much the long and the short of it.
Yeah, that's about the long and short of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I did get to play games with a couple of listeners, so that was fun. So engage with our audience, which was nice. So played the game we will be talking about later with Jane. She's very enthusiastic, enjoyed herself. So bump into a few more listeners as well. So and they gave us the usual feedback: more RPGs, fewer RPGs. We know. It has now become a running joke.
Just can't win, can we?
No, you never
can't make anybody happy.
I think overall, very, very, very good. Really enjoyed it. Major Tom's was there again as the bar. They had some fantastic IPAs on, so yeah. They've even invited me along to their actual brewery, which I said I'd do next time I'm up, which was nice. So I'll definitely be sampling that when I next go up to York, because they're not far away, and there's some fantastic beer there. So yes, very, very good. Excellent event. Well done, everybody.
So then, Andy, let's talk about this game that you did play, which is kind of new, although it's not new, but it is new.
You're going to stop talking in tongues now, Mr.
But it is new, but it's not new. No, well, you're going to have to stop me.
Power of Christ compelled you and throw holy water at you. Yes, you mean Libertalia.
Yes, Libertalia. I do. The second edition.
By Stonemaier Games. I don't believe the original was done by Stonemaier. I think they've just obviously acquired the IP and tarted it up, titivated it in modern style, etc., etc.
The original version was by a couple of publishers, actually. It came out by a few people.
Oh.
Asmodee at one point had their hand in it. Marabunta was Marabunta was the original one. I remember this coming out, but I didn't play it the first time round.
Well, this is basically a game about pirates. And it is I would say deck builder, but it's not really a deck builder. It's a very loose deck builder in the sense that you have a deck, you have some cards from that deck, and you kind of change it as the game goes on, but you don't really have a huge amount of control over what goes into it. So it'll make sense when I explain. But ultimately, you are pirates trying to obtain booty, as pirates do. And you have a crew, which then go off on a little adventure, and you decide which of your crew go off on this adventure. And your crew is played in essentially player order, or in initiative order, and each crew has a number associated with them. And the higher the number, the later I think they go in turn order. So you could have a really powerful one, but they might go later, by which time someone's already nerfed your turn. So the idea is there's a bunch of different resources, basically, and different types of icons that will give you things at different points in the game, or on your turn, or in the round, etc., etc., etc. But ultimately, the goal of the game is you play for 3 voyages, and at the end of the 3rd voyage, the person with the most dosh wins. And you carry your money over from voyage to voyage, so it's kind of an accumulation game. And there are a bunch of tokens that you can acquire, which will give you either reputation, which is essentially affects your turn order, and you can also gain booty, money, and also various other powers, like you can carry over pirates from one round to the next, because at the end of each voyage, your pirates get binned off, because piracy is dangerous. So what happens is, at the start of the game, you each get a set of 6 random cards, but you all have the same deck, so you all get the same 6 random cards. And it's up to you to play whichever card you choose in whichever order you like. So in the first round of the game, people play cards, and those cards have different powers on. So if you have played Red Rising or anything like, it's probably a bit like Magic, actually. I've not really played it, but it's that kind of thing where each card has a unique power, an ability, and it will do something. So
it's like the old choosing your roles in Puerto Rico, that kind of thing. That's probably the oldest game I can think of which uses similar
pretty much
aspects,
yes, that kind of thing. So, you could play like, I'm going to play my card, bang, it's going to be ace. Oh, crap, you just played the ghost, so you get to go first and nerf potentially somebody there, so I might lose my turn, that kind of thing, So whilst everyone starts with the same 6 cards, throughout the game, that might change, because in the second round, it'll be another set of random cards, and then 2 or 3 cards, whatever it is, and you add them to your deck. So you've got this kind of amalgamation of not 2 cards, it is 6 cards each round. So you might have 1 or 2 cards carried over from your hand to the next round. So everyone's deck is very slightly different from round to round, but largely the same. And that's basically it. It's very, very mechanically simple. So there are abilities that are played, say, during the day. So you go through the sort of left to right, and then you do abilities that are played at dusk, which you go right to left. So you could strategically play something deliberately late, so you get first dibs of the booty, and so on and so forth, which, because it's last goes first in that sense. And then the stuff that happens sort of essentially between rounds, which can affect things as well. So, you might have another card to play, or you might be able to gain money or reputation by doing, by having 1 card present. So it is mechanically very simple. You do that 3 times. You basically go through that, you go through your deck, so your 6 cards, and then you do another voyage, and each voyage gets progressively longer, so there are more rounds or more cards to play in each round. And then at the end of the 3 voyages, person with the most cash wins. It's really quite straightforward. Now, I haven't played the first edition, so I can't compare it. But it was very pretty. It was the typical Stonemaier production value. So, you could tell it's Stonemaier. It's well produced, well made, extremely well put together. But I'm very indifferent towards it. Alora really enjoyed it. She really liked it, found it was quite good fun. I found it a little dull, if I'm honest. But I think I just don't like this kind of game, because I played Red Rising, and it reminded me of that a little bit, which is essentially a great deck full of cards with unique abilities on as well. The mechanics by which you play Red Rising are very, very different, but ultimately you're just trying to chain abilities together to get as much stuff as you can, just in a different format. So I'd play it again if somebody put it in front of me. I didn't hate it. I wasn't overly enthusiastic about it, though, I'm not going to lie.
It does look quite a different style because the original was kind of, what's the way to describe it? I would say almost like more traditionally piratey. It looks like they'd taken, imagery based off like Disney, like the Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing,
It was
whereas
very
this feels very
stylised.
cartoony and stylized,
Yeah. But, I mean, it worked well. It was fine. I'm not really sure what else to say about it, to be honest.
Okay. Interesting. But, I mean, all right, interesting it's come out. I mean, I was quite surprised when Stonemaier said they were remaking this because I remember people being quite keen on it when it first came out. But it's one of those games I've kind of like not heard much about since.
Yeah.
I heard a little bit. Every so often someone might mention it, but it never comes across as like one of those games that everyone was desperate to get because it was out of print, So I was quite surprised when he said, oh yeah, we're doing it. Stonemaier's going and making this blinged up, updated version. So, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I only heard that after it had come out. And again, because I've not played the original, I didn't really care about this one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, our new friend Gareth had got it, and he said, "Yeah, do you want to play this?" So Melora was keen to play it, and sat down with Jane as well, and played it. It was all right. I mean, everyone seemed to have fun, but it's not something I would be rushing to play again myself personally. But I think that's probably because it's just not my kind of game.
Yeah.
Rather than it being inherently bad, which it isn't. It was perfectly fine.
So that was Libertalia. Well, it's not just called Libertalia, is it? It's actually got a little.
Has it got a subtitle?
It's got a colon.
Oh no!
It's the colons have snuck into board games.
That makes it more exciting, Steve.
Oh yeah, it's called Libertalia: Winds of Galecrest. So at the weekend, me and Andy played a wee spot of Bloodborne from Simon Games. Now, basically, we had a little meet-up. Sid and Andy both came over to mine and played some games, and we knew Sid was going to be late because he had to take the wee man to swimming or something like that.
Swimming and rugby it was.
Swimming and rugby. So we thought we'd play something quick, and I'd been playing Elden Ring basically non-stop for the last 5 weeks or whatever it is since it came out, and I fancied a bit of FromSoft action, and, I didn't want to put Dark Souls in front of Andy because I think he might have, at the very lowest level, sworn at me. At the highest level, caused physical injury.
Having played it before, no, that would have been flung at you.
Yeah. So I thought Bloodborne has been sitting on the shelf, tempting me for so long. And I actually replayed Bloodborne video game not that long ago. So I thought, let's give this board game another crack. So we cracked it out and we played the first little mission quest or whatever you want to call it. So for those who haven't played the video game, Bloodborne is a hack and slash kind of game where timing is everything. The whole idea of the game is you work out the timing of your enemy's maneuvers and then you attack at the right time. And it's very similar to the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring, but the difference is it has this mechanic where if you've taken damage and you do damage within a short time afterwards, you get your health back. So it encourages you to be aggressive. But it's basically like a Victorian Gothic hack and slash where all your characters are armed with a pistol in one hand and some kind of, they call it a trick weapon because it converts in the other hand. So the pistol in the video game is just for stunning. So if an enemy attacks you and you get it off and fire the pistol at just the right time, you'll stun them and can do like a super attack. The trick weapon, though, is really cool because the trick weapons basically can have two modes, which is usually like open and normal. And the standard one, which is always like the one you can start with and the one that's all on the promotional material, is like they call it, I think it's the saw blade. And it's basically like an axe blade with teeth on a hinge and a handle. So you can either use it like this cleaver or you can fling it and it becomes this massive polearm, right? But that's what the game's about. The game's about these crazy weapons that can convert. Like one of them is a sword. It's a bog standard long sword, but it's got this huge scabbard, and you plonk the sword into the scabbard, click, and then you use the scabbard as a weapon.
Nice.
Because it's absolutely huge. So that's how the video game works. The board game works on a card system. So every round you've got 3 cards. And then you've got a little board, which is your character and the weapon. Most importantly, your character is your weapon, basically. And you can play cards into the slots. And every action in the game costs you a card. So if you want to move, you spend a card. If you want to dodge, you have to spend a card. If you want to attack, you put your card into one of these slots on the weapon. And then when the weapon's filled up, you've got to spend a card to refresh the weapon. Or you can spend a card to flip it and basically do the trick weapon, which changes the weapon completely. You flip over the card, your little tablet, and then you've got more attack options. And that's really it. You've got 4 basic cards you can play, which are basic attack, special attack, dodge, and another one that I can't remember the name of. But any of them will go into a weapon slot and they'll do the effect of that weapon slot rather than on the card, but some of them will give you bonuses, like they might give you extra damage, or they might allow you to heal, or something like that. And other than that, it's really quite a simple, straightforward kind of miniatures game. You've got a card-based story system, so he says you're going out into Yarnham in the night and your job is to rescue as many survivors as you can. I'm not spoiling much because this is the first mission in the game, and so you have to explore. You've got tiles, the square tiles, you flip them over randomly to make a map as you build. You'll meet baddies, which at this point in the game are things like crowds of maniacs that are out to kill you, or half werewolf beasts, or these ogre chaps, which we didn't actually meet any ogre chaps, which I'm quite glad because they're bloody hard. And then what happens is you can attack them using these skills, and then they'll attack you. And if you've got no cards left when they attack you, well, you've got no defense. You just have to take it on the chin and take that damage. But just like the kind of Soulsborne kind of games, you're going to die, and that's built into it. So if you die, it's not game over. Basically, you reset if you die and go back to the beginning and lose any experience points you've got. But you'll get all your health points back and then can come back and fight again. So you can keep on going. You never get to the point where you'll horribly fail. You'll just get to actually you will. There's a little tracker at the bottom, isn't there? A little time tracker, so every time you die, it tracks along a bit more. If it gets to the end of that, then you die. But the tracker also resets baddies every so often as well. I've only played it a bit, but the mechanics feel very abstract, especially when you consider something like the Dark Souls game, because really Dark Souls and Bloodborne video games are very, very similar. And they've both approached it completely different. So the Dark Souls game is all about dice. You've got dice for attack, you've got dice for dodge. Almost like old-fashioned. This, however, feels almost abstract, but at the same time has the same kind of feel. So the big thing about Soulsborne game is you don't get greedy. You do an attack, and then you hang back. And you hang back to let your stamina come back up and be ready to deflect or dodge an attack. If you're greedy, you go in, do too many attacks, you've got no stamina, you get hit, you're insta-killed. And I found that was there, because if you got greedy and used up all your cards, then the bad guys would just hit you and you'd have no defense, and so splat. So there were times when you're like, oh, do I spend this last card to run into that location and hopefully that'll end the game, or do I hold back? And I think both of us at some point did both options. Oh, no, we're going to hold back just in case. Other times like, no, peg it, come on, let's go and hope nothing bad happens.
And it happened.
Yeah, it happened. But I actually think it's actually a really clever mechanic. It's quite straightforward. Play some cards into a slot. That's the damage you do. But it's got the essence of how the video game works in a slightly abstract way. And I've got to admit, I'm actually quite impressed with it. And I'm so glad I've got it, because after Dark Souls, I nearly didn't back this.
I have to admit, having not played Bloodborne, the computer game, so I have absolutely no point of reference, I really quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a very clever game as well. The mechanics for flipping your sword, once I understood what it represented, then it made sense to do it, and you could kind of plan for it or not. And with the limited number of slots you can actually play to attack, you obviously had to think about what you were going to do, and again, when, as you suggest, Steve. So... And I kind of like the idea of the, almost like the initiative or the speed at which you can do something. So whenever you do something, your opponent will do something as well. And your action and their action has an associated speed with it. So obviously the faster you are, the sooner you act. So if you've got a speed 3 and they've only got a speed 2, you're going to hit them before they hit you. So if you can kill them before they get the time to hit you, brilliant. However, a lot of the enemies could kind of like slow you down, or if you play a card, it'll do lots of damage, but it's really, really slow. So they'll hit you at the same time you'll hit them, at which point you might kill them, but they'll probably kill you as well. So you end up with a sort of no-score draw affair. So it's really, really cool to do that. And of course, you can go to the shop and upgrade various things, so you can change the cards in your hand. So there's a sort of very small deck-building element going on as well. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It's fucking difficult, but it was good.
Which felt right as well. That felt like the video game. The video game is not easy.
Yeah.
You know?
But it was, I enjoyed it. I think it felt like, and as again, I've not played the game, the video game, but I understand that the games are weirdly compelling because they are difficult.
Yes.
You know, I just want to kill this thing. I want to kill this. This thing is not going to beat me. God damn it.
Yeah.
And it has that because, you know, we were there. We got our arses kicked for the first few rounds. We got absolutely, well, I did, certainly got trounced. I opened the door to a house and was greeted by an angry mob and a bloody great werewolf. I thought, oh, shit. And thus was my arse handed to me on a large silver plate. So
yeah, we made the mistake and split the party as well. Which was never a good idea.
Never do that. So what do we do? Should we split the party, Steve? Should we stay together? Let's split it. It'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong?
We can cover more ground that way.
Exactly. So he cheesed it south. I went off west, and we both got battered. So yes, then we stuck together and it got a bit better. But it was, and because of that difficulty, I was just like, look, I am not letting these bastards beat me. I went straight back in. I'm having some of this. So yeah, I felt like it was really good.
Yeah, I think you got the point there, because one of the things about the Soulsborne games is it's not that this bastard's beat me, I'm not going to let him beat me. It's beat me because I made the mistake. Not because it did something cheesy, it's because I didn't dodge in time, or I got greedy and did an attack, or I went the wrong way. It's usually your fault, and you're like, oh, I should have been able to do this. I was almost there. And yeah, it got that because you were like, it was my fault. I shouldn't have run into that room, or I shouldn't have used the heavy attack. I should have used the quick attack. I should have staggered that enemy.
Yes, I should have used my gun and just shot it. Put Fido down while I dealt with the angry mob instead of just standing there like an idiot and just going, I take both of them. Oh, no, I can't. So yeah, no, it really had that feeling about it. So no, I really enjoyed it, and I really liked the almost the branching story element of it as well. Because when you go into locations, different events can happen, and it's kind of up to you in which order you do them and how you solve them, and when you do it, it kicks off different things. And obviously, the map's going to be different every time because it's randomly created to a point. So yeah, I quite like that aspect of it. So yeah, it all came together for me, and I was kind of on the way home. I was like, I'll play that again.
Yeah, and I only bought the base pledge for it because I've decided with something ridiculous like that, I wasn't going to go get it all in because maybe I'd have no room for the damn thing. And I am wondering with that one. I mean, I haven't finished the base box yet because it's mission based, and you got so many missions in the base box and so many missions in one of the expansions I've got. It's like, am I going to regret that later down the line? But at the moment, I'm not regretting it, so it's fine.
So we need to play it until you do.
Do you know what the really ironic things is? I've just got to double check this. Yeah, so you get some expansions as part of the base pledge on, when it came out on Kickstarter. So one of the expansions is what they call Chalice Dungeons, and Chalice Dungeons in the video game are basically just random dungeons. There's no story. You just go in there, kill everything, find the lever that opens the boss room, and you go in and kill the boss. So it's basically playing the game, but without the story. So that's one of the expansions. So it allows you to do that. The other expansion is Murgo's Loft, right? What we played is the first level of the video game. Murgo's Loft is the last level of the video game.
Oh, wow.
So basically what they've given you for free is the bookends of the story. I hope it's not representative in difficulty, otherwise you're just going to go from I'm doing well to dead.
I reckon my vote's for dead.
Yeah, I reckon dead. Yes, so that's Bloodborne from Simon. Hopefully we'll play a bit more of that soon.
Hopefully, yes. No, I quite enjoyed that.
So the other game we played, and all three of us played this, was a game from Board and Dice called Origins: The First Builders. And this is a Euro dice placement game. I will mention the theme now, because it is worth mentioning. It's all about ancient aliens. We're all different nations, and aliens have come down and told us how to advance our civilizations. And what we are doing as these different civilizations is going to these aliens for information to help us build cities, to help us go up temple tracks, to help us conquer and fight each other. I think, because the theme is a bit thin, should we say.
Anyway. Thin?
It was, yeah, let's be fair, it wasn't there.
No. It didn't matter what the theme was, did it?
You could have said any old rubbish there, Stephen. Wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever.
Yeah. So it's a dice placement game. And your civilization, your population of civilization is represented by dice, which you will draft. They go on the board and you buy them at set values. And they go in those little holders which denote that they're yours. And there's different colours. And when you send them, you basically send them to a UFO, which is the aliens, which is about the strongest element of the theme. And whenever you send a worker to the UFO, it's got a dice number written on it, and you rotate it to the next dice number. So basically, the more people go to somewhere, the more expensive it becomes. You need a higher dice value to go there, or you need to spend the difference in resources. When your workers all come back, they all go up a pip, and then everything starts on the next round. However, these UFOs keep going round, so it goes from 6 to 1. So if loads of people go to the same place, you can eventually wait until that little action goes from 6, which is going to cost you a fortune if you've got only got 2, back to 1, which you can do for nothing. Now, there's 6 different ones, and there's the set actions on the boards, but the colours which they appear are random, and they're randomised, and there's a special action for each colour. But they all give you like Euro-style actions, and basically what it does is there's 3 actions on each UFO. You can do, with any dice, you can do one of the grey actions, sorry. If you've got a dice colour that matches the UFO, you can do one of the grey actions and the coloured action. And then if you've got a 6, you can do all 3 actions.
If you've got the coloured 6.
If you've got the coloured 6, yes. The other thing you've got is, which is pretty cool, is you've got this leader, which is not a dice, it's a little miniature, and he can go to any spot, and regardless of the number, which means you can go anywhere you want. As the game progresses, once your dice go beyond 6, so they go up a pip when they come back to you. If they would go to 7, they go slot in the bottom of your board, and then now your leader has that colour, so your leader can still go to those spaces and get that colour. However, the main way you're going to score points in this game is you are building cities, basically, and the cities are made out of these octagonal tiles. And you'll buy them, of course. You'll have to spend resources to buy them, and you'll lay them out in front of you in a little pattern. And then every time you buy a building, it's got a special ability that fires off when you buy it. But because they're octagons, they leave little squares in between. And every so often, once you've got 4 in a square, you can complete it and turn it into a district by taking one of the dice you've got, with the right action, of course, and put it in the middle of that, which makes that a completed district. That, if it's the same colour as any buildings around it, it fires off those buildings again. But at the end of the game, you get points for the face of the die you've got times the tower of the colour matching. And the tower is just another thing, like a tower, a palace building, which has got these little tokens that stack on top of each other, little wooden discs. So if you've got a tower that's too high and you've got 2 6s, and an orange tower and 2 orange 6s, then you get 2 times 12, 24 points at the end of the game. You've also got a set of like scoring cards, which are district patterns, which show like different coloured district patterns. If you meet those patterns, you also can score the points on them. And they've got like 2 values on them, so they might be say like 12 and 7. So the first person to score a district of that pattern gets 12 points, and then everyone else after that gets 7. But it can be scored, that 7 can be scored as many times as you want. You've also got the good old temple tracks. You know, it's not a Euro game these days without a temple track. So spend some points to get up there. Whoever's at the top of those temple tracks gets access to these Zodiac special abilities. Of course, they're randomised every game. 3 of 12 are picked every game. And you've also got a military track which you go around, which it's called a military track, but it's the theme is that this is where the theme's, I think, thinnest, because basically you can attack and you get victory points based on where you are compared to other people, and you'll get a bonus resource, and that's more or less it. Now, I forgot to mention, this game was actually designed by Adam Krupinski, designer of Lords of Hellas and Nemesis and Dark Ages, which I still haven't played, and a few other games. So he's quite a prolific designer. I'm going to leave my thoughts to the end after you guys tell me what you think. Go, Sid. You're new to this Euro game malarkey.
I was new to this new Euro game malarkey. I was underwhelmed.
Interesting.
I don't know. I don't know what it was about it. It just seemed a bit kind of dull, bit meh. Do you know what I mean? And I would like to say it's because there was no theme. There was nothing to really hook me in. but I don't think that was the entire story of it. There was something quite mechanistic about everything, and yeah, it didn't blow me away.
Mechanistic. That's an interesting thought. Because I was thinking, watching, because I'd played the games to teach myself the game earlier, so I knew what I was doing and kind of knew what would score points in the game. And I did point out to you guys, like, right, you want to build your districts and you want to build your towers. That's where the big points are going to come from. And there was a point when I think we were about halfway through, and I looked at you two and thought, what have you been doing for the last half a game?
Yeah,
because you were doing lots of actions and you had workers and you were spending points and you were doing things, and I'm like, what are you doing?
but that's what I mean about mechanistic. It just felt like we were going through motions to, I don't know, we unlocked some workers, we accumulated a bunch of food. I wasted time in the military track, which is a complete, don't even bother with that. It's pointless. It just didn't seem to do anything.
No.
And you give you like one VP for rocking up towards the end of it.
It was one VP for rocking up and then one VP for each person you were ahead of. So to be fair, every time you did that action, you were getting 3 VP, but you need to do that a hell of a lot considering I scored like nearly 100 points. I think I scored like 97 points by the end of the game. So what you did trickled away, and you could have actually hammered that, but you were about to do that every single action
but even
to
if
get
you
the points. Yeah.
Even if you got to the end of it, which was a lot of actions you would have had to spunk up the wall to get the way around it. And even if you got to the end, you got 9 victory points. 9 sodding points for all that effort and expenditure. Well, okay, but... and then you start looking at then you've got the Steve voice and ringing in your head, especially at halfway through when you made it really clear. The f are you two doing? Not building cities. Right? At that point, you go, he's got a fair point. Just glancing over at Steve's bit of the table, and you know he's already sat there with like at the end game 30 or 40 odd points from the little thing he's done. You're like, yeah, we're doing this wrong. They're just fundamentally doing this wrong, aren't we? But it was too late then. It was too late. I mean, I hate to kind of bit the cliche, but I was like a couple of moves away from getting a good bunch of stuff shut down. But I didn't shut down quick enough because I wasn't paying enough attention to end game conditions. So you hustled the end of the game and, you know, swiped the floor with us. Although Andy did make a good attempt at trying to dislodge you.
He did.
Again,
yeah,
not quite enough.
I think my strategy would only have worked because I essentially went for the temple tracks. And
there was a lot of points. Yeah. The way the temple tracks has worked is actually also interesting, worth mentioning. You don't get where you are on them; you get where you are on the lowest 2. So there's 3 tracks, and you score the lowest 2, which means you've got to basically go up evenly. You know, having 1 right at the top and 2 at like 3 points is worth nothing. But if you could manage to get them all the way up, I think there's like something ridiculous, like 140 points up for grabs, which was a lot.
Yes, and I got about 70 or 80 from where I was. But I mean, one more round and I've probably got an extra 30 points. But of course, because of the random nature of the way the little temple discs come out and the way you were buying them like they were going out of fashion, I didn't have enough time to get high enough up the track to even vaguely compete with what you were getting out of your cities. So I think the long and the short of it is, if you don't build cities, you ain't going to win.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. You said partly through the game, it felt like Teotihuacan.
Well,
and at the time, at the time, I didn't quite appreciate it. I thought, it's very different. You know, okay, it's got some dice in it. That's about the same. But I think you're right, because one of the things about Teotihuacan is there's lots of places you can get points, but you really need to be building that pyramid because that's where the big points are. And I think with this, they're the easiest way to get big points. And I think with this, the easiest way to get big points is to build those cities, fill those districts with dice, and, you know, get the points that way.
Yeah.
So question for you then. In a lot of the other Euro games we've played, it's all been about different ways and each of us playing a different game to get to a win condition.
The points salad is the many people refer to it.
Yes,
I prefer points buffet.
Buffet, right? That I think I find really interesting and fascinating because everybody's competing on an unequal or different playing field.
Yeah.
And that makes it interesting. Whereas with this game, it's exactly that. We all tried a different technique. Andy and I got it horribly wrong, and Steve wiped the floor with us because that was the only real profitable way of getting to the end game. And I think that's what I mean about the mechanistic kind of feel for me, was you almost felt that you couldn't change from building cities to win that game. You had to do that route, and why bother with a temple track then?
Yeah, it's almost like the game's on rails, basically, which means you force down one route. You might pick up a couple of extra points if you can snaffle an action or two on a low cost UFO that'll get you up the military track or up one of the other three tracks. You get that, but that's more opportunistic than planned.
It's exactly that. By the end, I was on the red, which was the military track, and I could get some free actions and free moves there because I'd got the red advisor fella. The dice had gone to 7, and it was like, well, what's the point?
I think the only way of doing those things is just to hone in and just do that. Just do the temple tracks and nothing else, and just basically spend all your actions doing that.
That's what I tried, and it was almost working. I think I got my engine started a little too late, but there was a nice little sort of arrangement where I could pick up like 3 or 4 stone, I think it was I was using, to go up the temple tracks, because there's an action to pick up some stone and then 2 other actions to go up the temple tracks in like jumps of 3. So every round I could go up 6 or 9 steps, and it was kind of working because I had a big pile of stone ready to spend and I could use my dice. But by the time I actually got that working, you'd ended the game. I think the problem with the temple tracks is they're just too bloody long for the rest of the game.
We did say, because one of the end game conditions was to build the towers, wasn't it? So once you'd used up the little pieces to make a tower, that would end or
But
the draw for our towers seemed quite light in a couple of colours, wasn't it?
It was 3s and 5s. So 2 colours had 3 tokens in, and the rest of them had 5 tokens in. It wasn't as uneven as it felt.
Right.
It felt uneven, but it wasn't uneven as it felt. But the other endgame condition was you run out of worker dice, and we were actually closer to that than it first felt. I reckon the game would have ended pretty soon after that, running out of worker dice, because I was starting to plonk them onto. Into districts. You were starting to put onto districts, Sid.
Yeah.
You two had both worked them all up, so your advisor, your chief worker had 5 or 6 dice there, and you both scored actually a huge amount of points from the bonus of working up your advisor. At one point, I was actually getting a bit worried that you two might get quite high up on that, which might put me at a bit.
We would have done had the game gone on one more round.
Yeah,
because
I think
Sid was about to promote 3 dice. I think I was promoting 2 or 3, but you ended the game, which obviously is.
And to be fair, I did end it then because I thought if I let this go on, it's going to be squeaky bum time. So I've got the gold, I've got the resources, and it's only because I did something which got me the gold that I went, right, let's go for this and end this.
I think you're right, because with one more round, I'd have got an extra 30 or 40 points because I've been higher on those tracks because I had the resources to do it. So yeah, you're probably right. I think it would have been a lot closer than it was. So I think you ended it at a good time for yourself. So you played it spot on. But yeah, it does kind of indicate that the game can only really be won one way, which is a bit silly.
It did feel like, as you said, that the districts was the main way of getting points, and everything else was, as I said, a little bonus, something to add on the side.
It's like when you had a spare action left, or you didn't quite need to do your main action for whatever reason, you'd go and do a little bit of that. But
well, the military one I thought was only worth doing to get the resources on the military track. Sometimes you got resources for doing the attack action. It felt like, well, actually, that's a quicker way of getting the attack, getting that resource than going to one of the other UFOs.
But then it cost you. So that action, you got a food for going that route, and then you did the conquest, which cost you a food, or something cost you a food. So you ended up with a neutral nothing. And all you got was a VP.
That was the special one. Yeah, that was, yeah.
And that might just been the luck of the draw and what we got that time, but nonetheless, it didn't feel that useful.
So I kind of summed up my thoughts with the word all right. And when you say all right, you can add inflection to it. So you can go, well, how was Origins? Well, it's all right, Or you might go, oh, it's all right. I actually think Origins is all right. It's right smack bang in the middle. It works. It does what it's supposed to, but didn't set my pants on fire at all. In fact, they weren't even lightly smouldering or even warm. They were just
or moist,
comfortable. Well, I think they're not going to be on fire if they're moist.
Exactly.
That sounds like that sounds a bad place to be if you've got.
They
moist
were just
pants.
in a my pants are in a tepid temperature.
Yeah, it did feel a bit beige. I'm not going to lie. It was a bit beige. It wasn't dreadful, but nor was it, amazing.
It's weird. It felt lighter than something like Teotihuacan, though. And I wondered whether that was the problem. I wonder whether we feasted too much on these complicated Euros.
Yeah, but I haven't.
Yeah, true.
I haven't. And, for me, if I was looking at that game as something to introduce myself into it, I would have gone, well, this is straightforward. I can get my head around this. It wasn't the kind of brain burners that you've thrown at me in the past. But even I walked away from it with, all right. Well, do you know what it was? I didn't feel like I wasted my time.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I could have done something else.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was one of those games that it filled out 2 or 3 hours. I enjoyed my 2 or 3 hours, but I left it. And if I'm honest, I don't really remember much of it now. There's nothing in it that's gone and really stuck in my head. And I haven't played. I wasn't driving home like we did when we played with one of those other T games that I played at yours.
Tekhenu.
When I was going home and I was going through my head. I can't remember which one it was now. But anyway, whichever one it was. That one, I went home mulling over different ways I f***ed it up or different ways I could have played differently or things that I've learned and things that I can now think about next time. Whereas with this one, it's like the theme. It's all just a bit meh and unnecessary and it didn't add anything into the game. And maybe that's part of the problem.
I think it comes, for me, it comes down to the whole game just felt a bit disjointed. Like none of it really flowed together. Like, like in a lot of these, I mean, maybe it comes back to the lack of theme, I don't know, because in, Tawantinsuyu, in Tekhenu, in Tuatikaduka, in Tolkien, all of the others, there's a reason to do one action which leads to another, which leads to another. You can kind of chain your actions together. You can kind of plan what you're going to do and why. In this, it didn't feel like that really existed. And
that logical way that you've just said that you can link your actions together. Like if I buy the food, I can make the food into something else and then do something with the thing I've made. That makes the whole thing kind of hinge together and help with not only understanding of the game, but it makes it feel like you're doing something for a reason.
Exactly. And whilst I did try to do that with tracks, I basically got Stone to go up tracks, so it's pretty much all it was, a very simple strategy, and it didn't work, but never mind. It seemed to be the only thing I was doing. I was basically ignoring about 80% of the game, which to me seemed a bit limiting and a bit silly, whereas in Tawantinsuyu, Tekhenu, you can't do that. You can't focus on, you can't spread yourself thin over the 6 areas of the board, for example. You have to focus on maybe 3 or 4, not just because you won't be able to do all 6, but because you have to do 3 or 4, because you can't just focus on 2, because the game won't let you, because every space is linked to at least 2 others. And you can't just go on 1 and those other 2, because one of those other 2 is linked to another 2. So you've got to try and overlap them. So it's a much deeper, it's a much more complicated game, to be fair. But they're a bit deeper and there's a little bit more to them. And I think that little extra bit makes the game a lot better. It's a lot more cohesive, basically. This just seemed a bit more like, let's just chuck some stuff at a wall and see what sticks.
I wonder, and it's, we can't go and we'll never know the answer to this, if my opinion would have been different had I not played some of the other bigger, heavier, more complex Euros that we have played.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, do you know what? I will put that into context, though, Sid. The other games we mentioned are by the same publisher. Tekhenu, Teotihuacan, Tawantinsuyu are all by Board and Dice. So they're all, they're all coming from the same place. The same people are doing the final stages of design of this. So if you'd have gone for two completely different publishers, I might have gone, well, yeah, okay, there's something drastically different going on here. But it does feel like, it feels like it's set at a lighter market. But the problem is it doesn't have enough to point to you and go, well, this is a lighter game than the T games.
Yeah.
No. It doesn't signpost itself as that, does it?
No. So I don't think there's much else we can add to that, really, is there?
No, it was all right.
It was all right.
It was all right, yeah.
It was all right. So that was Origins, the first builders from Board and Dice. All right then, folks. We've got a mailbag.
Bulging.
We've got some questions.
Alex Eels asks, he's looking for a recommendation for games that are predominantly co-op, but with a competitive element, so semi-co-op. Hits so far have been Gloomhaven, Nemesis, and Spirit Island. Three very good choices there. We can't argue with that. Whoever suggested those, spot on. They're brilliant games. He says, thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Much appreciated. Thank you. Keep listening. What else can we offer? Well, I've been thinking about this. And I did think of more. I can only think of one of them now. So I'll keep talking and hopefully they'll come back to me. One of slightly Dead of Winter because that is definitely a semi-co-op, and or obviously Battlestar Galactica. Whilst they're not unfathomable. So they are kind of co-op, not semi-co-op. There's sort of antagonists there, but everyone's on the same boat, so you kind of have to get to your destination.
Yeah.
But that kind of antagonistic element there is probably a good shout. And also, weirdly, I did say Moonrakers for this, but also New Angeles.
Oh, yes. See, when I saw this question, my first thought was Crisis.
Yes, that's a good shout.
Which is it's got a very similar theme-ish or implementation of theme to Crisis. So those are games where Crisis is one you're acting against each other really, but you've all got to do well because you've got to beat a score at the end of every round. And if you don't beat that score, then it's game over and everyone loses. But yeah, New Angeles is a good one because that is one where you've got to work with other people. Because if you don't, it's like a pandemic style. The games go end because bad things are happening. But at the same time, you are trying to shaft everyone and come out on top.
Yeah, I really, really like New Angeles, but it's not for everyone. It does have to have that caveat.
It's a hard game to get to the table, isn't it?
It is. It's also a bloody long game. It's it's 3 hours minimum if you're going to play that with the full sort of 5 or 6, and you really do need to play it with 5 or 6.
You do need to play it with 5 or 6, yeah. That's one of those games which it's in my collection, and I keep looking at it and thinking, how am I ever going to play this again? And then I'm like, do you know what? I'm not getting rid of this. I love this game too much. I probably never play the damn thing again, but I'm not getting rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. I've got exactly the same thinking. It's like I'm never going to play it more than probably maybe once a year, if that. But it's so bloody fun when I do that, I can't get rid of it.
I might be able to throw one into this.
Ooh.
And that is, recently I played Tiny Epic Dungeons. And that plays out really quite co-op. But you've still got a little bit of competition, but not really competition, I suppose, between you and your fellow players. It's more a healthy rivalry in robbing kit off each other, probably more to the point. But that's a really interesting one because it's recently out as a Kickstarter, isn't it? I don't think it's hit retail yet, but it was it's dungeon delvey, turn the cards over kind of dungeon crawl thing. Your classic characters, gnomes, dwarfs, elves, magic, hitty stuff, kind of stuff. But it played really cooperatively to the point where you're getting quite excited with each other, trying to beat up the baddie and beat up the monsters, and some of the mechanics in it were quite cool. With it forced you to draw the boss out of his lair, for example, into the dungeon so that you could pummel it a bit further. And if you didn't draw it out in the right way and you didn't have your party members weren't in the right place, you couldn't necessarily draw it the right way. So somebody might have to take a pummeling just to get the boss out of the dungeon so somebody else can clout him. And I tell you what, it was really good fun. Okay. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, a lot of the Tiny Epic games have got a pretty good reputation, actually. We played Tiny Epic Galaxies, very competitive. But yeah, that's come out really, really well as well. So a lot of the Tiny Epic games have got a good rep.
And I think they've all got, across the range, they've all got a slightly different mechanic and a different, I don't want to say USP because it's not USP, but
theme.
Kind of the theme's different, but also the rules are different, and they play out quite differently. Like, Tiny Epic Dungeons is a proper dungeon crawl, whereas Tiny Epic Dinosaurs is about building a dinosaur park and all that kind of stuff. So they're really quite different in how their mechanics fit in as well. But I found it as a really good co-op game, which still felt like I was trying to get a little bit ahead of my person I was playing with. Mm-hmm. But much more co-op than I would say competitive, that one.
I mean, you mentioned Moonrakers just then, and we mentioned it earlier. I don't know how commonly available a game is, but No Honor Among Thieves is an interesting one, because it's the same but opposite, in that you have to work together to do certain scores to get the points. But at some point in the game, someone is going to shaft someone else. And at that point, then the knives really come out and it becomes fully competitive, Another two games, actually, it's kind of slightly bending the kind of requirement a bit, but like alliance type games. So something like Rex/Dune, depending on which version you can get hold of, or Rising Sun, which are all games in which you can have alliances with other players and you can win cooperatively, or you can win individually. But the competitive games with the option, with like the chances of there being a bit of cooperation during the game. I say chances. Both games actually have it kind of baked in. Dune/Rex is one of those games where you can actually win or lose the game at the point when the alliances change. Because somebody goes, hang on, I've got enough points to win now, so if I get an alliance with that person, we both win. But if we don't, then, if we don't get the alliance, everyone's like, no, don't get the alliance, otherwise they don't win, stop them.
I mean, I could almost say Twilight Imperium, because you can form alliances in that, but that's a kind of extreme end, because...
Yeah, it's not standard, is it?
No,
it's not how you win standard.
No, it isn't. It's mostly competitive. You just can form alliances. So yeah, it's probably a looser fit to that than anything else.
Well, I'll ask this question because somebody's asked this being a bit cheeky. So Rory Summers has asked,
damn him.
Are there any decent IP board games where the IP is more than just a skin for a decent game? I'm assuming he means games which are based on an IP, not IPs in board games.
I assume so. So things like Lovecraft, Star Wars, Disney, Dune, things like that. Yes, yeah. That's what my reading of that is. Yes. Goodness knows what.
Well, there we go. We've mentioned it. We've mentioned a few of them there. Dune
Imperium is bloody brilliant.
The Dune board game is actually a really good implementation of the Dune universe as well. Bloodborne, we mentioned earlier, that was a really good implementation.
Yes, yep.
Alien, Glorious Day in the Core.
Ooh, that was controversial, that one, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
You're just saying that because Rory didn't like it and he's not here.
Well, if he's going to poke the bear by asking a cheeky question, I'm going to poke him back.
I mean, Aliens is hard, but it is possible because I played it. I think before we played and after we played, and I did manage to succeed in the missions. It's just difficult. You just got to change the way you play, but it is kind of fun, and it does what it says on the tin. It's manic, it's free, it's insane, it's difficult, and you've just got hordes and hordes of these bloody things just after you, and it works.
Maybe it's bending his question a little bit, but the reason I bring it up is, I don't see how that game could work without being skinned the way it was skinned. Do you know what I mean? It kind of like...
I know what you mean, but at the same time, I think that Aliens game could have been any miniatures game with hordes of monsters. You change the aliens to zombies, and you've got a bog standard zombie shooter kind of board game.
Yeah. I suppose it's more the instant connection with the storyline.
Yeah, you've got the connection, but it's like the Bloodborne one. I mean, the Bloodborne one feels like someone has taken that IP and really thought about how to turn it into a board game. And I think Dune is another good example. And Dune Imperium's taken a deck builder and turned it into, fighting over spice. And
which one was it you guys played? Was it one of the Dunes that you didn't? Was it you
Dune
didn't care
Imperium.
whether it was skinned?
Oh, no, that's right. Actually, Dune Imperium is a good example of not. Yes, I would say Dune, the board game, is a good example of the IP being used properly, whereas Dune Imperium is the one that feels like it's just been a deck building Euro game has been skinned.
Yeah, I remember that's what your feedback.
No, yeah, I remember.
It was.
You're right. Yeah, that's there. You're right there, Sid.
Still good. But yes,
it's a good game, yeah, but it could be almost anything.
I don't know if you want to count any of the Lovecraft's IP or not.
See, that's a bit. I agree with you. There's loads of great Lovecraft games, but it's not. It's quite a loose IP, isn't it? Lovecraft these days.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know if there's any good Star Wars games because Outer Rim we found a bit meh.
Outer Rim, but Imperial Assault's
very good.
It's very good.
Star Wars.
X-Wing is brilliant.
Yeah.
X-Wing is one of my favourite games ever, so I think that's and
Rebellion.
Interestingly,
is awesome.
Oh, Rebellion is absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
Yes. X-Wing is a good example because someone tried to reskin the rules into two different games, a Star Trek game and a Dungeons & Dragons game, and both of them felt like this is still an X-Wing game.
Well, that's good for the X-Wing game.
Doing this, I should not be able to do this kind of maneuver in the Starship Enterprise.
No, those are the cells that probably get torn off. Yeah, it definitely does not. I mean, manoeuvring the Enterprise must be like manoeuvring the Houses of Parliament, I'd imagine.
Well, the irony was that somebody did this. They took the X-Wing thing and reskinned it into Star Trek, sorry. I did some interesting things. They changed the manoeuvring so it's not as strong. But then, I think it was 2 years later, Fantasy Flight came out with the battleship version of the game, of the Star Wars. What's it called? Armada. Came up with Star Wars Armada, which is you've got Star Destroyers and your X-Wings are tiny little miniatures with 3 on a 1 penny piece stand. And then you've got Star Destroyers that you need to turn it. You need to do a 180 with your Star Destroyer because your main guns are facing the wrong way. It's well, that's not going to happen this week, is it?
It's almost like Armada is the epic version of 40k.
Yeah.
Where everything, your Armada, your battleships are Titans, and your tiny little X-wings are, your little bog standard 5 to a stand Marines or Orcs or whatever. But yes, so yeah,
I haven't played Armada in a long time. I haven't played Rebellion in a long time either.
No, I owe you a kicking. That's 2-0 you're up with a dirty Rebellion. The Empire owes you a whooping, sir.
Yeah, so we've had a question from Phil Fennerty, who says, I'm a proud father. Congratulations, sir. As number 2 son, age 16, is going to run a D&D game for number 1 son and some of his friends. Now, Phil, I assume, is keeping at arm's length.
Wise.
But he asks, have you any tips for a new DM embarking on the first stint behind the screen with a bunch of not family on the other side? He can offer his own advice, but he's looking for some independent, well-structured, constructive advice from presumably us.
And he came to us.
Now, he's a brave man coming to us, but there's more here.
Brave,
he says,
foolhardy.
But he says that the starting point will be the Lost Mines of Phandelver.
Good choice.
Which, frankly, is a fucking great place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great adventure.
Although he does concede that the 3E module, Nemorin's Vault, is also up there in his estimation.
3E.
And finally, he thanks us for our wisdom. So, gentlemen, provide wisdom.
To be honest, it's probably a good thing it isn't family, because family feuds are also, it's easy to wind your family up, whereas friends, I would say, are slightly more forgiving.
I don't know. I play with you lot. You don't give an inch.
No, we don't.
There's nothing forgiving in anything that we do.
Well, we have to be forgiving when chaos rules the party.
Well, I think, given that I'm going through a bit of this at the moment with T2K, completely different set of games and different sort of experience points, but don't overthink it. I think that is the only bit of advice I can get. I feel that you guys have said to me a few times, but until you're there, you don't realise how bloody important it is. not to overthink the prep that you're making for the game. Trust the game, trust the mechanics, and trust that you will be able to do something because you're not there on your own. Everybody else sitting at that table is there to get amongst it, and it's not all stopping on you as a DM.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, and
shouldn't be.
But your players have a responsibility, I think, and that's probably one of the conversations to have before you start. Is remind folk that as well.
Know your characters.
Yeah,
characters. Players.
Try know your rules. Just at least have a working knowledge of the rules.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you don't get them all right. No one will. We still forget rules, and we've been playing for RPGs for literally years. And we still forget stuff. Oh God, which system is this? Oh, is it Alien? No, it's grenades are in Alien. These rules are in this system. Oh yeah, which is the initiative way round? Always, every single time. So
it looks high to low. I can never remember.
It always happens. You'll make mistakes, but don't worry about it. Just hand wave it. If there is a truly awful situation that arises, don't panic. Just kind of agree with the players around the table. Also, tell you what, this happens instead. Let's retcon it. Let's start again. Whatever works for the groups involved, as long as everyone is kind of happy with how you actually proceed. I mean, okay, if you leave it to the fate of the dice, so be it. Whoever gets on the receiving end of that and gets screwed, they've got to accept it. But at least if everyone agrees that that's the way to handle it, then it should be okay. People should be able to accept it with good grace. But don't worry if you make a horse arse of it. It really doesn't matter.
And I think just be careful with calling for dice rolls. I know D&D's not a big culprit for this, but doing a dice roll should mean something. And if you don't like the result or you don't want to follow through with the result, don't make a dice roll. It's just silly.
See, no, I have a little cheat that I used to do in D&D. I used to call for a dice roll when I was stuck.
Oh.
And I know the big advice is don't call for a dice roll, make every dice roll important. When someone would say something and I was like, crap, I can't think of what that is, I'd ask them to make an appropriate skill roll. And by the time they found the skill, what it is, rolled the dice, added it, and told me the result, I've then thought of what I should tell them. And then the result of that skill roll will decide how much I'm going to tell them. For instance, like, are there any inscriptions on the wall? I'm like, are there any inscriptions on the wall? I can't remember if there's any inscriptions on the wall. Give me an observation check, or whatever it is. Give me a wisdom check. I rolled a 5. Well, you didn't find anything.
Nope.
Neither did I.
I mean,
see, your dice roll mattered there, though. I think the thing is where if you're not going to like the answer, so somebody rolls, a really good high dice or rolls a 20 or whatever, and then suddenly your monster or whatever you've planned meticulously is dead in one shot. But you're not, it can leave a bit of a.
Well, that can happen anyway. I remember the first time I ran Mines of Phandalvar, and the first dungeon in it came to the boss, and basically they killed it before it had a chance to attack them.
Nice.
Because they went supernova on it, and they said, "Well, that's the boss. Let's hit it with everything."
What was it? A kobold?
No, it was not to give too much of a spoiler, but it's a bugbear with a few goblins.
Oh yeah, that one.
And they just hit the bugbear with absolutely everything they had. And of course, they killed it in one go. To be fair, then they had a bit of trouble wiping up the goblins then because they were ignoring them and they were sniping from behind cover kind of thing. So,
That said, you can totally mess with the party as well. Once you're sort of slightly more comfortable with them, you can ask them for a dice roll just to keep them on edge and do nothing with it.
Do nothing with it, yeah.
Or, if you're feeling really mean, you've got a DM screen, roll the dice, and then either go, or... And then everyone goes, what was that? Nothing.
As you're flicking through the book, pretending.
Yeah. It's all for show. But it, as well, I mean, we've mentioned sort of derailing in a comedy sense, but it will happen. The party will go somewhere that you're not expecting them to, that you don't want them to. You can't stop them because you can't stick up invisible walls in an RPG. That's not really what it's worth. It's not like a video game. But don't worry about it. If they go to somewhere that you haven't prepped or something that you're not expecting, don't worry about the stuff you have prepped because you'll always be able to use it. Because don't forget, the party doesn't know in what order they're supposed to encounter stuff. So if you've prepped a room that you're expecting them to go into at a particular point, don't worry about it. Throw it at them later. Because they don't know any better. It means your prep's not wasted, and they get to have the kicking that you want to give them as well.
Just trying to think. Another handy one is really good beginner's tip is have a list of NPC names to hand, or have, if you've got like a phone or an iPad or something, have the like random name generator handy. There's a couple of websites that do them, because there's nothing worse than going, oh, we've met a goblin on the side road and decided to friend it. What's the goblin's name?
Damn.
Well,
You
now,
have one.
there's an interesting one, given our recent experiences. Would we recommend, because I'm getting the impression that Phil and his kids are playing this in person, would we recommend something like Roll20 or Foundry to make some of it easier in terms of rule learning?
Ooh.
I would say no. Because
Yeah, I'm on the fence on it, you see.
Get
I'm very much
in
on
and
the
get
fence.
amongst it.
because we have the advantage that we've learned the rules before we use the systems online, so we know what's going on under the hood, so that when something happens on the screen that we're not expecting or we don't understand, at least one of us goes, that doesn't look right. And then we'd look through the rule book and go, oh, actually it is because of these reasons. But, the fact that we have the wherewithal to question it without just blindly accepting the stuff that we get on the screen, I think that helps.
To be fair, there is still fun in forgetting that you've not added up your modifiers properly.
Oh,
getting
yeah.
it wrong 3 times and then getting angry 2 turns later. Shit!
Or
I didn't add my magic sword.
Or spending half of an entire campaign forgetting you would get a charisma bonus to every fire attack that you spend. Things like that. But again, it comes down to getting the rules on. But yeah, no, I would say do it in person, learn the rules, get amongst it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's the better. It's what RPGs are for, really.
I think it probably is. That's a good bit of advice, actually.
Always have a couple of encounters up your sleeve. Now, that's advice that Steve's given me in the past. And it is good because when your party does go somewhere random, you can throw one of these random encounters at them just to keep them interested. Instead of just trekking across a plain or down the road or whatever it is, you can throw something at them to keep them busy. And they'll be thinking, oh crap, how do we engage this merchant or this band of roving gnolls or whatever it is, whilst you're busy in the background trying to work out how the hell to get this charade back on track.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested. I'm interested in a question back to Phil. I want to know what Phil's advice would be. Because that could be quite, interesting. I think it'd be interesting to see what you would do, Phil. So let us know. And also let us know how it goes.
Yes.
Because I'm curious.
Yeah. I'm interested. I would just know, did they carry on with the main quest or get sidetracked like my party did? That poor dwarf, kidnapped dwarf, I basically told the players he was dead at one point because they'd left it so long.
Poor dwarf.
Yeah, let us know how they get on. And is the man in Fandolin a Yorkshireman? Because as far as I can tell, every game I've ever played of Lost Mines is always from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
It wasn't. You're the guy I'm talking about, aren't you?
It was the Dragonspire Peak. It was the town leader. I can't remember his name now.
Oh, was that the mayor? Aye. Look behind her. I'm coming out. I'm not coming out. There's dragons out there. Yeah, him.
So right then, folks. I think we'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much for listening. We have been Polyhedron Collider. Please give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you want to ask us questions, you can send stuff on Facebook, Twitter, and the Board Game Geek Guild 2726. I have set up a questions thread on the Board Game Geek Guild. So if you have got questions, you can throw them there. If suddenly something comes to your mind and you're waiting to shout out. Until next time, happy gaming.
Tatty bye.
Cheerio.